Hello, and welcome to another edition of Atlas Information Live. I'm your host, Atlas Alex, and today we are going to be exploring a reality, not a concept, but a reality that unfortunately has far too many people on the spiritual path in a state of how do I express this? In a state of being mistaken, in a mistaken state of being. Now, what do I mean by that? What does it mean to be mistaken in terms of the state of your being? This means that we are in a place where our conceptualization, our beliefs, our cognition, our thoughts about our state of being are not aligned with reality. In other words, we are mistaken. We believe one thing, but in actual fact, it's very likely that the opposite is true. And while that on the surface sounds like polar opposites, like that's on the surface, when you say that, the impression it leaves is that there's this vast gulf between right or wrong. And then he must not be talking about me. He can't possibly be talking about me because to be so mistaken, to have such an erroneous belief about our state of being that the opposite is true, that must represent such an error in thinking that there's this vast gulf, vast distance that would be required in order for me to fall into a belief about my state of being that is opposite to what is true in reality. But this is not the case. Because our mind thinks in binary duality and binary dualism, right or wrong, this or that, and we have a tendency to be hyperbolic in terms of that process. So, for example, if it's not us, it's them, right? It's like, if it's not black or white, and black or white are clearly opposite of each other, there are polar ends of the spectrum. Presence of light, absence of light. I mean, you can't get any more different than that. Or us or them, or and right or wrong, good and evil, right? It's we have in our perspective this notion that what separates right from wrong, good from evil, is this huge distance and or an enormous wall, like a terribly high wall that would require an enormous amount of effort to traverse in order to get to the other side. So we have this viewpoint that if someone says to us, well, your beliefs about your state of being are erroneous. They're off a bit. And because they're off a bit, you believe one thing and reality is the opposite. Those two statements don't compute in the mind. How can something be off a bit and as a result the opposite is true? Right? Like if it's off a bit, then it's only a little bit incorrect. It must only be a little bit untrue. Right? Something in the nuance, something in the details. But let's not forget that age-old expression, the devil is in the details. And I'm going to show you how that's true today. And we're going to see for ourselves just how true it is by virtue of an expression that happens to be the title of today's talk, being taken for a ride spiritually. And in order to help facilitate this process, I've actually done some preparation for today. And in order to do this preparation, okay. So let's see if I can bear with me one moment while I try to arrange some windows. And if it is it this? No, it's not that. What is it that I'm trying to no, not that. Okay. There should be this. Okay. Let's see if I can take this and reposition it over here. Is that going to work? Okay, so if I share now, this is where it's going to be interesting. No, I don't leave studio. No, that's not it. Here, there. That should be it. Can you guys can see that, right? Okay. That's of course is our slide for today. The thumbnail for today's live stream. So, being taken for a ride spiritually. And in order to facilitate this process, we are going to be amending an allegory, a symbol, and an analogy that you should be very familiar with because we've talked about it before many times. But a refinement of that came to me this week. And I'm going to maybe get into more details of this as we towards the end of today's live stream. But let's start with what we should be familiar with. So when we think of a human, we might think of uh, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. And we might consider that this image here is both a vessel and a vehicle. And when we explore the word human itself, of course, the human as a vessel and a vehicle is made up of two components. Hume, which translates to earthen vessel. Hume being that soil, that earth, that mass. That's where we get the root word of the word humus. It's it's what matters. It's the physical. It's the sensual, right? It's the earthly. That's the vessel aspect. And what does the vessel contain? Well, it's very much a vessel for manas. That is the cognitive vehicle of the human being, mind, in other words. And the cognitive vehicle, as it suggests, transmits, it carries, it transports. And it's cognition, it's thinking, it's all the mental acuities and mental faculties that take place within this sensual, material, physical vessel. So very much here, we're simply referring to what normally we would call body and mind. But clearly, as is contained in the word human itself, body and mind are united. They are combined as one in a vehicle. So how can we better understand that vehicle? Is there a symbol, is there an allegory that captures this duality of what a human is, body and mind? And of course, when we look around us and pay close attention, we do find such a vehicle. That vehicle, right, is a bicycle. With a bicycle, we have one wheel, the rear wheel, which relates to the body. This is where a bicycle gets its traction, where the rubber meets the road. Right? The body exists in the world of action, in the physical world, in the sensual world. This is how we execute actions. We take action in the world through our body, through that Hume. And this is how a bicycle, the vehicle, performs its primary function and action in the world, which is to serve, be as a vehicle, which is to propel forward. And in order to do that, it has to have traction. It has to have one wheel that drives and connects with the earth, literally connects with the ground and propels us forward. That is the rear wheel of the bicycle. That relates directly to the body, where traction and action are as one. The front wheel of a bicycle relates to the mind, because generally speaking, even though the body kind of has a mind of its own at times, most of the time we can say that the body follows the mind. Right? Most of our actions that we perform with the body, we think about first. I want to do this, I want to do that. I have an intention, in other words. And I execute that intention through my body, in the physical world. So the body follows the intention or the direction that the mind sets. So the mind is pointing one way and the body follows where the mind generally speaking goes. Not always, because these two things can be, the mind can be wandering, doing its own thing, and the mind can be operating on muscle memory. But again, for the sake of simplicity, for the sake of this particular analogy of how can we capture or describe in a common, well-known vehicle, right? We're describing the human machine. But of course, a bicycle has a crank. In other words, a third wheel. This is where a bicycle gets its power. It's basically like a link, a connection, because after all, the mind can be pointing in a certain direction, but without some kind of will, without some kind of desire or emotional connection or attachment to that direction, the body has no reason to go there. We have to will the body to perform actions most of the time. Some actions of the body are automatic. They work, you might say they work on gravity, like when a bicycle is rolling down the hill, the rear wheel is going to work. And when it has momentum, the rear wheel is going to spin, even if we're not pedaling. These are the automatic, mechanical, gravitational forces in our life. So all of the activities of the body that require no conscious mental input on your part and no willpower, no real effort on our part. So the body has its own kind of intelligence that way. And the body will function on its own according to very mechanical laws associated with it. And again, that's like a bicycle that rolling down the hill, just because of the laws of gravity, the laws of motion, the laws of inertia or momentum, it's gonna do what it needs to do. But oftentimes, it takes tremendous effort. Like when we go to the gym, or when it comes time to clean the house, or perform other chores, or yard work, or what have you. Anything that requires a great deal of effort on our part, and indeed possibly even willpower, because the gravitational forces pulling on the body may be, and indeed the mind for that matter, because the body and the mind are one. Remember, we're talking about the same vehicle here. They're connected. And if gravity's pulling on the body, believe me, it's also pulling on the mind. And we know this because these are the effortless forces in our life that take us a certain direction and lead us to act that way with the body, and then the mind will very often follow the body. So when you're hungry, the mind registers, "Ooh, I'm hungry, I want a snack," or "I want to eat," or when we have other desires of the body, the mind can come and rationalize for us why we need to, give the body what it wants. So very often we have to go against that. Like, for example, when we are biking uphill, gravity wants to pull us down the hill. So it takes tremendous, but if we want to go opposite of that, we don't want to give in to those mechanical forces. We have to fight against them. It takes tremendous effort to pedal, to turn that crank, and to get the body to go against gravity, to go against its existing inertia and give it new inertia, new momentum, a different direction, which goes against these forces. And all of that comes from the heart, because willpower comes from the heart. That's our vitality. That's our an intestinal fortitude. And when I say heart, I don't just mean our physical heart that beats and circulates blood through the body, but the broader heart chakra, which includes our solar plexus. And you may know that expression about being punched in the gut or having intestinal fortitude, right? Um, soldiers are said to have guts, right? Because that comes from that lower aspect of our heart that is able for us, that is able to drive us and drive our body to fight through all sorts of mechanical obstacles that are standing in its way. And then we also have expressions like, wow, he has a lot of heart, took a lot of heart to do this. And we have other expressions like, well, I'm doing my work and I'm going through the motions, but my heart's not in it. Right? So in a very real sense, a bicycle, it's just without that third wheel, without that crank, which is the heart of the bicycle, let's face it. It's the source of a bicycle's momentum. It's its drive. Literally, it's the drivetrain of the bicycle. It's the engine of the bicycle, if you will. And in that sense, without that drive, without that engine, a bicycle is only good for one thing, and that's rolling down a hill, i.e., following completely mechanical laws, and it can't fight against that. Without a drivetrain, a bicycle can't go uphill. It can hardly move at all, like any machine, certainly even like an automobile. But here we're dealing with the two-wheeled vehicle here because of the relationship between body and mind. So heart is literally at the heart of this vehicle. So that's one of the first things that the bicycle analogy adds to this concept of hume and manas. So a human, right? The bicycle informs us that there's hume and manas, there's body and mind, but there's also heart. And what is more, that heart is essential. But if you notice the location of the heart, the location of the crank on a bicycle, it is directly connected, directly above it, vertically. We have the seat post, which literally connects to the seat of the bike. That literally is the seat of the soul. The seat of the soul has a direct one-to-one line to the heart of the bike. And that's because the seat of the soul in a human is within the heart. Additionally, we can talk all we want about the front wheel being the mind, but the front wheel requires direction. The front wheel doesn't turn on its own. I mean, it can, to great chaotic effect. If you've ever ridden a bicycle and taken your hands off the steering wheel, off the handlebars, you know that depending on what speed you're going, you can maintain that for a while, but sooner or later, it becomes tenuous at best, and you got to put your hands back on the handlebars. That direction, that guidance in the human comes from our conscience. And it's not just the handlebars in this area, but also the brakes. And our conscience is that aspect which you have probably noticed will put the brakes on, particularly when our vehicle is being taken by mechanical forces, like by gravitational forces, and we're running out of control downhill, and we're just gaining momentum and gaining speed, and we're literally like a runaway train. And if you've ever been on a bicycle and going downhill and you're reaching alarming speeds that are dangerous, especially for the type of bicycle that you're on, you know, or when you're going down that hill and you see the T junction or a dump truck or a garbage truck or somebody, something else running out in front of the road, right? You need to be able to slow down. You need to be able to put on the brakes. But how do you know to do that? How does a machine know to do that? It must have that capacity built into it somehow to receive guidance and direction in order to not only to swerve and avoid obstacles, but also to put on the brakes. And that's very much the role of the conscience. So there's a lot more to this human, just like there's a lot more to this bicycle than just a vehicle with two wheels. So in order to really understand this vehicle, we have to penetrate with our consciousness, and most importantly, our conscious experience, our self-evident experiential knowledge, because we've all ridden bicycles. We must look inside, right? The hidden factor, the esoteric factor of the bicycle, and that is the being in human being, the one who sits upon the seat of the soul, the one who is conscious, whose consciousness directs us, who's able to consciously direct the human machine and communicate with us directly in terms of conscience. The still soft voice that puts on the brakes when we are at risk of running out of control, or at risk of running headfirst into a wall, or careening off a cliff. It is our conscience that puts on the brakes. Now, I'm not talking about fear here. I'm talking about conscious awareness. I'm talking about those moments where you've thrown caution to the wind. There is no fear, right? But you're going for that. I don't know how many whichever drink, or whichever, you're going for your third donut, or whatever the case may be. Right? There's no fear there. Could be that you're in fear. And that same conscience can put on the brakes and slow you down and make you step back and get out of your fear. So we have our being on the seat of the soul and giving us guidance, giving us direction through our mind, because the connection is to the front wheel is through those handlebars. But the brakes go both to the mind and to the hume, to the body, the rear wheel. Because very often we know that our temptations will come from the body. And we know that the body likes to run away with it from us, or to get away from us. And this is especially important with certain practices, including especially the practice of white tantra. And you have to be able to be aware and remain conscious, and to know how to regulate the movement of the machine, so that it doesn't run away from you, and you have to be able to know how to apply those brakes. Last but not least, we see the source of power, the source of energy, the source of locomotion for our vehicle. That drive that we talked about through the heart, that will, the effort, the energy, the vitality that makes the human machine come alive and gives force and power to the direction and to our conscious awareness. That also comes from our being, who sits upon the seat of the soul and who drives the human machine. I suppose I could have been doodling on this. I wonder how well that works. I'm just curious to see how, if I can do this. Oh, I have it here. Can I? Yeah, so let's see, just right? Can I make that any bigger? Laser pointer, pen, highlighter. Okay, so right, so we have the mind. Right, we have the body. Where are we down here? We have the heart. We have the being. So in other words, we have Hume and Manas and being, the human being. This is the triune or triunity of a human being. And if we were to use our clever, when we say triune, tri means three, un means one. Three, you take the I and the N, 3 in 1, human being. Hume, Manas, and being. So the heart, even though we have the physical heart, as I said, the drive, the power, the force, the will is connected to the seat of the soul. That's why the heart and soul are one. And that's why you don't need it in human, because the heart is connected to the being. And the heart is actually the seat of the soul. So when we say human being, that's where the heart is with our being. That's why love is associated with the heart. It's not associated with the mind, and it's not associated with the body. It's associated with the heart. But what's essential to recognize here is that the bicycle This is the vehicle. The being is the rider. The rider, the driver, the passenger. Now, let's this when we say triune, meaning three in one, okay? If we take the I and the N out of the word triune, we put it in, we have a three in one, we're left with T R U E. The true human being. This is a true human. Because the vehicle, body and mind, are in alignment, and the mind is following the direction of the conscience, of the consciousness, and the heart is driven by he who sits upon the seat of the soul, and the body, through its connection through the heart and the mind, that vehicle, that human, that manas, that human vehicle, that human machine serves as the vehicle for our being. This is what a true human being is and looks like. Let's so then, what do we make of this image? I throw it open for discussion, for speculation. Here we see a bicyclist. We see a bicycle, we see a vehicle, and using the analogy that we just presented, this vehicle has a being, has a bicyclist, has a rider. So who's this other person? What do they represent? I'm not going to make it easy. I'm not going to tell you. I'm opening this up for comments and speculation. This was the thumbnail. Remember, the title for today's talk is Being Taken for a Ride. So who is this being taken for a ride? Take a moment. Take a guess. Look, there's nobody here judging. There's nobody here judging you. There's no real right or wrong answer necessarily. What do you think? What does your heart tell you? What does your gut tell you? Who is this? You can describe this or put this into any context you wish. I gave you the background. I gave you the background. What is the analogy of a bicycle? The human machine and the being who uses it as a vehicle. And the being is giving it direction, and the being is driving it. So then, okay, and you know that someone's being taken for a ride because that's the title of today's talk, and I this is the thumbnail. So who is being taken for a ride? Who is it? I'm not gonna tell you the answer. We're gonna wait here. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be severe. I'm gonna be like a parent with a child sitting in front of his asparagus or his broccoli that he doesn't want to eat. No, we're gonna sit here until I get an answer in the comments. Someone has to guess something. You're not getting off that easy. I made my window a little bit bigger here just in case. Are you okay? Mr. E Mushroom, thank you. Finally, we get somebody, a brave soul taking the diving the first penguin. You know how there's when penguins are all huddled on the edge of an iceberg on an ice floe, and there's like literally there can be millions of penguins literally huddled up, and then and then nobody wants to be first, and then one penguin jumps in, and then everybody jumps in. uh, Andrea says the passenger maybe is the personality, the false self who complains and screams at every bent and curve. Wow. Okay. Both of these are excellent answers. And uh I always forget it's Andrea, right? Is it Andrea or Andrea? No, it's Andrea. I'm pretty sure it's Andrea. But anyway, if I got that wrong, you please do correct me. I don't want to get anybody's name wrong. So both of these, the lunar mind and Andrea's answer, the false self, the personality, the false self. So Andrea, the first is right. Oh shoot, I didn't know. So Andrea then. I think that's what I said first. Or was it Andrea? I think okay, maybe it's Andrea. Anyway, clearly my lunar mind is in control right now. So both of these are excellent answers. And in fact, Andrea here is getting one step ahead of me, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. What we are looking at, what we are looking at, Andrea. Okay, great. Um, okay, what we are looking at is, you know what? I'm not. We're just gonna. I'm just gonna talk through it. You guys can. I don't have to draw on this slide. This is a passenger. This is a passenger who's getting a free ride. And the in this particular case, you could say complains and screams, sure. But I chose this image very specifically because previously, when it's just a bicycle and a rider, that's a true human being. That's a triune human being. Hume, manas, and being in a triunity. And the machine, the human machine, that's body and mind, obeys, follows the will of the being. The being determines how fast the bicycle goes, with the energy, with the force of will, and with the guidance, with the conscious guidance and direction on the handlebars, and with the conscience of putting on the brakes. That's the will of the being. And the human machine, our body and mind, that's the bicycle. We are the vehicle, right? But this passenger that we have is most troublesome. Andrea says, who complains and screams at every bent and curve. So, you know, she's being taken for a ride, right? She's going for this ride, but if the ride is too bumpy or choppy, or it's not going in the direction she wants, right? She complains and screams. Yeah, maybe. But you know what else she does? She's a very attractive, very tempting passenger. I'm sure she uses all of her beguiling beauty and all of her sensuality to tempt the being, the consciousness, to hypnotize the consciousness. It's a she because its nature is feminine and mechanical nature is feminine. Desire is feminine. Cravings and aversions and all of the sensual pleasures and all of the sensual all that give us sensual experience relate to the physical body, but also can hypnotize and beguile the mind. It's temptation. In other words, this is Adam and Eve. If the true human being, the being is created by God in the Garden of Eden to be a triunity, made in the image and likeness of God, and God is a trinity, masculine, feminine, and union of masculine, feminine. In the true human being, we have the being who is androgynous, the masculine mind, and the feminine body. So you have masculine, feminine, and union of masculine, feminine. And in that union creates the vehicle, the vessel for the being, for the divine androgen to be able to traverse an experience. So it is the feminine aspect, the body mostly, that we can become identified with and attached to. The pleasures, the sensuality, the desires, the cravings and aversions. And remember that these are like gravity. They're mechanical, and that they can influence the mind. They can influence the front wheel. But more importantly, they can hypnotize the consciousness. Seduction, in other words, to seduce the consciousness, to tempt our awareness. And if you observe yourself, you note that all these, you're constantly being bombarded by impressions which are beguiling in some way. They're calling out for your attention. They're calling out for you to pay attention to them. They're calling out for you to act on them. And within you, the cravings and aversions that are telling you, they're getting you to change your direction. They're getting you to change how you pay attention, to what you're paying attention, and to where you put your energy, where you direct your drive, how fast or how slow you go. There's this, and this I, this sense of self, because every single one of these temptations or beguilements, these seductions, present themselves as an I. I want this. I don't want that. I'm tired. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to do my work. I want to do that. I want to play video games. I want to surf the net. Oh no, I don't want to eat my broccoli. I want to eat a bag of Doritos, and so on and so forth. And because they all present themselves as an I, then they're always building up that I. They're reinforcing that I, and they're conditioning us. We have this voice in our consciousness, which is telling us where to go and telling us what to do. And it's a loud voice, and it might not be one voice. We might experience it as many, many different voices in our head. And that self, because let's be clear here, right? Where is the I here? Where's the self here? That false self is adversarial. It wants what it wants. It knows what it wants, and it knows how to get it. But the only way it can get it is to hijack our vehicle. And how do you hijack a vehicle? The self, the false self, the psychological aggregates, the algorithms that make up the false self, they have no source of power. They have no source of locomotion. They don't have direct access to the handlebars or to the crank. Right? It's like a computer virus that infects your machine, your computer. It's just a little bit of code. It has to hijack your system resources in order to take control of your computer. And that's exactly what our temptress here, our seductive passenger here, is doing. And I love the way that she's looking into the camera, because it's like she's giving us all this gangsta look, saying, haha, I got him under my thumb. He's putty in my hands, literally. Literally, I can get this guy to take me wherever and get him to do whatever. Why? Because look at me. Because I know exactly how to get what I want. I know exactly how to get my way. And like someone, like a prima donna, starlet or musician, right, barking orders from the back seat of a limousine to the driver of the limo. That's what this person is doing on the back of this bicycle. And you look at the smile on the rider's face, He's beguiled. He's hypnotized. He thinks he's got a good thing here. Andrea says, no shame, that girl. Remember, this is all an allegory, right? This is we're dealing with symbol and allegory here. But it's a story, right? And this picture tells a story. And the story it tells, to me anyway, is a woman who's getting a free ride through whatever city. Maybe it's New York, maybe it's Milan, maybe it's, wherever it is. And she basically is getting a free ride here. So let me ask you again. Who is being taken for a ride? Who's being taken for a ride? You have two options. There's two people in the story. Who is being taken for a ride? And here's a hint. I chose that language very carefully and very specifically. Today's talk is about being taken for a ride spiritually. So who is being taken for a ride? Andrea says, the guy, it seems. Correct. And who is the guy? And who is the guy? In our analogy, in our symbology, in this allegory. Because remember, in when we're dealing with allegory and we're using a story, a parable, to relay truth, things are never what they seem on the surface. So if the guy is being taken for a ride, who is the guy? Andrea says the consciousness. Yeah. And the consciousness belongs to the being. It's the being. The true self is being taken for a ride. The consciousness is being hijacked, hypnotized. And we have the adversary, shaitan in Hebrew and Arabic, getting a free ride by taking our innermost, our true self, for a ride spiritually. It's like a tick or some other parasite. A tick who jumps on the back of a deer in the woods and travels across the entire woodland, the whole time sucking on the deer's blood. It's the deer that's being taken for a ride. The parasite, the passenger, the false self, is getting a free ride. And in order to do that, the false self takes the being for a ride, the consciousness for a ride. And her very loud, seductive, tempting voice, right? Yelling and screaming or whispering sweet nothings and flattering us and all kinds of, you just observe yourself, just observe the voices in your head. Just observe how those voices through your mind and how the urges in your body, how they get you to act on them. This is the allegory of Adam and Eve. This is why it's Eve who tempts Adam. Eve gets tempted by the serpent. The serpent is sexual energy. It's the vitality, it's the energy. But it's through Eve, the feminine aspect, that Adam is tempted and falls asleep, is hypnotized by, is beguiled by. This, unfortunately, is the state of most so-called spiritual people, particularly in the New Age, particularly in religious people. This is what's happening. Their I, their false self, tells themselves that their being is taking them for a ride. And they see themselves as being taken on this ride through life. And then, like I mentioned in the comments, or not in the comments, in the description to today's live stream, I talked about Bill Hicks, that comedian from the 70s, early 80s, who talked about, it's just a ride. It's just a ride. You can do whatever you want. It's like a roller coaster. It's just like any ride. It's inconsequential. It's just a ride. It's a joy ride. In other words, it's a joy ride. And this woman in this image is definitely, she's on a joy. She's having the time of her life. It's a joy ride for her. And she's getting whatever she wants. She knows how to manifest her desires. She knows all the affirmations, right? She knows how to use visualization. In other words, she knows black magic. She knows black tantra. She knows how to get whatever she wants. And she calls it a ride, and she's going on the spiritual ride, the spiritual journey. And she talks about her higher self, and she talks about her power. My power and my truth, and claiming my true power. And you know the affirmations. I am unlimited abundance, and I am this, and I am that, and I am one with the universe, and I am one with God, and I am awake, and I am already Christ, and I am already one with everything. All that I. All those affirmations are coming from the woman on this bike. Who tells herself, it's just a ride. I'm just going for a ride. I'm just going for a ride. And she can convince herself that she has a higher self and this and that, and it's all good, and it's all good, it's all God, it's all spiritual. And unlimited abundance, because God's nature source, they call it source, right? Source is unlimited abundance. And source wants me to have unlimited abundance. So I'm going to claim my power. I am one with source. And I'm going to use unlimited abundance. That is this woman telling the driver, the cyclist, where to go, what to do, and what to give her. It's called freeloading. That I, that self, that false self, which is a composite of all of the sources of desire, the cravings and aversions, fear and lust and pride and greed and gluttony and all the rest of them. And she'll tell herself, but I'm being taken for a ride. I'm on the spiritual journey. I came here to experience. I came here to experience joy and to experience happiness and to become God and to be one with all things. And yeah, she's on the bike. She's on the bike and she can get the bike to take her wherever she wants to go. She can use that poor fellow and with her beguiling charms and talents to use some like crude language, she basically is turning her higher self into a simp, into a sugar daddy, a spiritual sugar daddy. And she, like so many gold diggers who flatter, who shower their man with compliments and with praise and all the rest of it, right? Gold diggers will do anything they have to do. They'll whore themselves out incessantly to be able to exploit their meal ticket. There are so many different words that we can use to describe what is going on this bicycle, because exploitation is the modus operandi of ego. It is the modus operandi of mechanical nature. And you look around the world and you see everywhere you look, you see exploitation everywhere. People exploiting the system exploiting the people, elites exploiting the both. You have criminals exploiting people's naivete, right? You have con artists exploiting people's trust and naivete. You have, it just goes on and on and on and on. Even forget about criminals and con artists, just brands, just companies exploiting people's trust, exploiting people's expectations, and exploiting people's needs. It's all around us. Everybody's trying to get the best of everybody else, trying to one up, and nobody wants to get the short end of the stick. And who's being taken for a ride? Really? In all of it, who's being taken for a ride? Who is ultimately being exploited? Individually, one person at a time. And this is where you start talking about, age-old stories like the war between heaven and hell for the souls of humanity. Because who is in the seat of the bicycle here? And what did we call that seat? The war between heaven and hell for the souls of humanity. It's who sits on the seat of the soul who's being exploited. But the only way he can be exploited is through the vehicle. And the vehicle that consists of, right, three brains: body, heart, and mind. These are the three brains of the human machine. But they're nothing without the soul. So the false self, through the body, heart, and mind seduces and hypnotizes what? The other aspect of the being, which is consciousness. And the consciousness falls asleep. And so basically by getting on the back of the bike, right? Hitching a ride. By hitching a ride, using those three brains, and that's why there are three witches in Macbeth. There are the three Furies in the Odyssey, and there are the three murderers of Hiram Abif in the Masonic tradition. But the three wise men bring their gifts to the newborn Christ when the three brains work for our rider, our being. When the human machine brings all of its gifts, all three of its gifts, rear wheel, front wheel, and crank, are all devoted to our innermost bicyclist, our innermost rider. Remember, I said at the beginning that a very slight tweak in one's understanding of one's state of being can flip the script 180 degrees. So much so that the phrase being taken for a ride spiritually, you do not even have to change the language. You do not even have to change the thought. Being taken for a ride and being taken for a ride applies to both passenger and rider. One exploiting, one being exploited. And it's the same phrase. There's no difference. And how you identify where is the self? Who am I really? Where am I in this story? Am I being taken for a ride? Or am I being taken for a ride? Or am I taking advantage of my being and being taken for a ride? And being taken for a ride. Right? The language is exact. It's specific. It's so subtle, the difference, that you can think the thought and be on the wrong side and have it inverted 180 degrees. There is no huge gulf between a true human being and a being taken for a ride. It's so subtle. It's a little twist. And this is why in the Garden of Eden, it's called a fall. Because to be on a tightrope, is it a huge gulf? Is it a tremendous mistake? A terrible mistake that's required for you to fall off that tightrope and fall into the abyss? No. It's a slip on a banana peel. Not that you're going to encounter a banana peel on a tightrope, but you know what it's a momentary lapse of judgment. A strong breeze, a freaking pigeon coming and landing on your balance beam, your balance bar, a particularly fat pigeon that knocks you off balance and causes you to fall off that tightrope. That's what we're talking about here. That's how easy and how subtle it is. Even as children, I'm sure you heard the expression, even if you didn't necessarily play the game, but I'm sure you've heard the expression, step on a crack, break your mother's back. Who is this mother? Who is this mother? And the cracks in the sidewalk are tiny compared to the slabs of concrete, and yet even children know the game is not to step on those little cracks, because it's the cracks that do it. This is why we have expressions like the chink in the armor. Or if you have had a sweater or something and there's one little thread, right? And you start pulling on that thread and it unravels the entire garment. Or if you think back to, what was it, 1989, and the space shuttle Challenger, when it exploded, and it was found out that it was an O-ring, a faulty O-ring, and not only was the entire space shuttle destroyed almost instantly, but it also shut down the entire shuttle program and all of NASA for years until they figured out what the problem was, and until they fixed the problem. This is what it means to be on the path of the razor's edge. That it's not this huge, vast gulf between good and evil. It's a slip on a banana peel. It's not a huge, vast gulf about whether we're awake or asleep. It's in any given moment, it's what is the story? Well, I would be remiss if I left it here, because this is a tragedy. And let's face it, this is the beginning of the Bible. If this is the beginning of the Bible, the rest of the Bible is how to fix it. So how do we fix it? Well, if I used a story to get us this far, then let's use a story to get us out of it. Who can tell me about this photo? Let's consider this photo. Let's consider this story. What's going on here? Who's in this photo? First of all, is there a bicycle? Let's start with that. Is there a bicycle? Anyone? I'm gonna pull this severe thing. I'm not gonna give you the answers today. I'm not gonna give you every answer anyway. I'm putting your feet to the fire. Is there a bicycle? It's a yes or no question. I got to get the ball rolling here. Oh, it makes me wonder if anybody's actually listening, if you guys are just like tuned in but doing other stuff. We have two people riding a bicycle. I got Benjamin Raphael says, yes, well, of course there's a bicycle there. Okay. In the previous slide, right? In the previous slide, we had a man pedaling, right? And on the front of the bike, right? Steering. Is there a man in this photo? Well, actually, you know what? Let's it could be, couldn't be, like let's not get into the details. But in the previous photo, the woman was on the back, and in this one, the woman is on the back again. But who's pedaling this time? Who's pedaling? Right? In the first one, we know the guy's pedaling. And we know this feminine. In the second one, right? Okay, the woman is pedaling this time. And the person in the front he's got his own set of handlebars, and he's still in the front. But the woman is pedaling. So here is the big question. How are we going to discern? Mr. E. Mushroom says the essences. The essences. Do you want to elaborate on that? Who is the essence, or who are the essences? Are they both the essences? Is that what you're saying? Let's try to get a little bit more specific. Because yes, I can work with essences, but we need a little bit. Okay, so the little one is the essence. Okay, and it's an essence, right? Because he's a little guy. He's a little one. Right? He's not fully grown, is he? He's not fully developed. He's a little one. So then, generally speaking, if this is a story, who is, but he's sort of riding a bicycle here, right? Who is taking him for a ride? Tell me about the woman. Who is this woman? If the little guy is a little one and he's on the front, it's his bicycle. He's in the lead. He's first. He's first. So who is this woman? Okay. We're getting somewhere. Okay. I want you to bring it down to earth. Who is this woman? Did someone take a picture of a guardian angel, Benjamin? The little guy is a little kid. Okay, he's just a kid. Who is this woman to that kid? I'm like let's tell the story in the photo, then we can take it right to the next level. Who is the so did someone photograph a guardian angel here? I don't think so. So what did they photograph? Who is this woman? Ah, his mom, his mother. Of course it's his mother. Do you think this is not normal for strange women to be taking strange children for rides on a bicycle in this way? It's his mother, it's his mom, it's his mother. It's his mother. Who else but our mother puts us first? Who else but our mother gives all of her energy to drive, to give us a ride, and to direct all the while so that we can acclimatize ourselves to riding a bicycle. Because we're just in essence. But in this photo, right? He's having a good time. He's having the time of his life. Look at his face. It's exciting, it's thrilling. And maybe at times it's scary, and maybe he's, he'll have a different expression on his face, but his mom is in control of that bike ride. Now remember, the human machine is the bicycle. The one who sits on the seat of the soul is our being. But if our being, who is first, is only an essence, then the one who matters, the one whose energy we rely on, whose guidance we rely on, and whose protection we rely on, whose nurturing rely on, is our mother, our divine mother. Oops. I'll pull that over here for just 1 second. I'm not going to play you this song because it'll get us copyright struck. But I'm sure you are aware of the song The Child in Us by Enigma. This is one of the lyrics from that song. And maybe I don't know, can I play this? I don't even know if I set the volume, so I'm not even sure if the volume is going to play, but let me if you're familiar with the song, you're familiar with the song. You're going to know the lyrics. Someday you came, and I knew you were the one. You were the rain, you were the sun, but I needed both because I needed you. And you were the one I was dreaming of all my life. When it is dark, you are my light. But don't forget who's always our guide. It is the child in us. From the first moment I ever heard this song, I and these lyrics hit me, my heart welled up 500 times, like, and I just bawled tears of joy. Because in these lyrics, it captures both of what's going on um, in our story. Oops. This is the story. These are the lyrics. Because who is our light when it is dark? And who is the one, whether it's the rain or the sun? And we need both. And the child in us, there is the child in us, and the one who is our rain and who is our sun. Because there is no child without a divine mother. There's no child without a mother. Not in the supernal worlds. Not on the path of the evolution of the consciousness and the self-realization of the being. The essence has to grow up. The essence must be nurtured. We are in a process of becoming. Becoming a cyclist. Becoming a true human being. And that process requires someone to have our back. Not on our back, not taking us for a ride, but taking us for a ride. Here's the difference. And it doesn't mean we cannot pray, we cannot use affirmations. But tell me if you can spot the difference between these two affirmations. I am unlimited abundance. And in the presence of the God of my being, unlimited abundance and prosperity flows through me. Do you see the difference? One is very short and easy and trite, and you can rhyme them off. Another one is more thoughtful and more contemplative. The second one recognizes that there is an order to things. There is a story that must unfold. One affirmation is this. Another affirmation is this. This is the new age. This is self-help. This is 90% of what you will encounter out there, what people believe and think of themselves as spirituality and spiritual. There's people who regularly use psychedelics and on and on and on it goes. People who are manifesting their desires and using affirmations and 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 walking around believing that they're awake and believing that they're gods already and on and on and on and on and on. This is the reality. This is the few. The irony is that this is the rain and this is the sun. if we want to use our lyrics from the Enigma song, the child in us, because this is our test. And this is our learning, our journey. This is mercy, and this is severity. This is temptation, right? This is realization. This is pride and vanity, and especially mystic pride and lust and fear and greed and all the rest of them, envy. This is radical humility. This is we need to recognize and see. This is why we always have to be in constant observation of ourselves. We have to see and we have to know when we are being hijacked, when we are being taken for a ride, and when we are being taken for a ride. Because spiritually, there's no difference. Life has its ups and downs. The reason why they call it a ride, the reason why Bill Hicks calls it a ride, because what roller coaster do you know of doesn't have peaks and valleys? What bicycle path do you know of? What bicycle route do you know of doesn't have ups and downs and peaks and valleys? Our Divine Mother is always behind us because she always puts us first. The serpent, Devi Kundalini Shakti, the divine feminine force, can raise us up and nurture us and help us in our evolution. Or if it is inverted, it can cause us to fall. It can exploit us, cause our exploitation, our hypnosis, our ignorance. It is how the feminine force is being used and being applied in our life. Are we, and whether it is the divine feminine or its mechanical inverted nature. Are we being taken for a ride, the ride of our lives, or are we being taken for a ride down the wide and easy path into hell, or the long and narrow and difficult road into heaven? And you will notice that, you know, the bicycle, the human machine, is just the human machine. The vehicle is just the vehicle. The real drama, the real story is taking place on the vehicle. It's who's using the vehicle and how the vehicle is being used. The vehicle itself is not, right? Nobody's changing the vehicle here. The feminine force always serves and nurtures the act of creation. And ultimately, what the consciousness seeks to create is gnosis, self-evident experiential knowledge, wisdom, experiential knowledge. And without the highs and lows, without the rain and the sun, right? Without the obstacles, there's no room for growth. And if we believe we are awake already, then it's just our mystic pride that's feeding on wherever we are, and we have no place left to go. And if we think we're convinced that we're already one with God and one with the universe, and that's because that's what our mind, the voices in our head are telling us, then we have no room to grow. We have no place left to go. If you're already one with the universe, what is there more than the universe? So yeah, so let's just enjoy the ride. Let's just coast the rest of the way. Let's just joyride. But the reality is far more startling and stark. This is the reality. And the reality is that without our divine mother, right, because she is an aspect of our innermost. And she sits upon the seat of the soul here while our essence develops. Until one day, if we are humble and grateful and listen to our mother and learn our lessons, then he will grow up. We will grow up, our true self. And we will be able to possibly become a true human being. A triune human being, a lone rider. But until then, we have this constant threat, this constant temptation. But we have this available to us. Our divine mother is we are never forsaken. We are never abandoned. And which is it? Which is it that we're going to be? Are we going to allow ourselves to be taken for a ride spiritually? Or are we going to give in to the voices in our head and allow our being to be taken for a ride spiritually? And in doing so, be taken for a ride spiritually. To be or not to be? That is the question. And it is so maddening and frustrating when you listen to those learned intellectuals, those with literature degrees and PhDs, expounding on how Shakespeare is talking about life or death. He's not talking about life or death. He's talking about being taken for a ride or being taken for a ride. This is why it is the question. Because to be or not to be, the answer is not in the words. It is a question. And life or death is just taking two opposites and grafting them onto the words to be or not to be, making it a statement, not a question. It's a statement, but Shakespeare didn't say it was a statement. Shakespeare didn't say to be or not to be. That is the statement. It's the question. It's not about life or death, because life or death are these polar opposites. But to be or not to be taken for a ride or to be taken for a ride, which is it? Now there's a question. And yes, that subtle nuance, which is not even in the words, leads to a 180-degree difference of not being or being. To be or not to be. That's the question. We are always, always have the feminine force at our back. But is it the divine feminine? Does she have our back? Or is it mechanical Mother Nature that is exploiting and taking us for a ride? To be or not to be. So when we do our affirmations, where we do our other practices, are we doing them? Is the bicycle doing it? Or are we being done? And how are we being done? Are we being done right by? Or are we being exploited? Are we complicit in the machinations, the diabolical scheming that seeks to take advantage of our true self and take us for a ride? Or are we working, cooperating with our Divine Mother in service of the essence for the sake of the development and the evolution of our immortal soul, of our divine self, of our true self? So when you do your practices, who's doing the practices and for whom? Are we in constant observation of ourselves, in remembrance of ourself, in remembrance of our Divine Mother, without whom we could not ride this bicycle? Or are we believing our own bullshit and believing the new age gurus and the self-help gurus and claiming our power and taking our being for a ride? This is how subtle and how meaningful and significant that subtle difference is. Are you being taken for a ride spiritually, or are you being taken for a ride spiritually? That's how subtle the difference is. That's how easy it is to fall off the high wire on the path of the razor's edge. It's a slip on a banana peel. It's the cracks in the sidewalk that break your mother's back. Change our Divine Mother from this into this. By the way, in biblical terms, Benjamin, I'm sure he can perhaps shed light on this, but in biblical terms, we have um, the Virgin Mary, and the whore of Babylon. That's another way to understand these two women on these bicycles. And these are the three witches. Here, the bicycle is the three witches of Macbeth, the three furies, the three murderers of Hiram Abif. Why? Because they're here, the machine, the human vehicle, is sending the being to his doom. The being is being exploited. The being is being taken for a ride. And the three wheels of the human machine, the front wheel, the back wheel, and the crank, that's mind, heart, and body, is the vehicle of our being's failure. But here, that same mind, heart, and body is a vehicle of our being's salvation, of our being's evolution, of his nurturing and growth, of his self-realization. So here, the bicycle, the three wheels of the bicycle are the three wise men who bring their gifts to the newborn Christ, who's just a baby, he's just a kid, who's in the arms of the Virgin Mary. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions or any comments? I guess it perhaps goes without saying that there's a very good chance that I will be working this up into a video at some point in the future. So this was but this is not the first time that I've used the bicycle analogy, but now this represents a refinement, very much a refinement from what it was before, which was oversimplified and this is from my point of view anyway, this is far more useful and meaningful and practical. And also the bicycle analogy yielded more knowledge, more wisdom by focusing on these aspects of the human machine and how it all comes together with the bicyclist, who is the being. And then that relationship between how the being is being, we are either taken for a ride or taken for a ride. And this is the real subtlety. Whereas before, I made the mistake, and it was a mistake, of associating the mind, the meta mind, to the being, and then I ended up with this analogy where you are either on a bicycle, you are either a true human being on a bicycle, or you are a unicyclist. And that analogy was very clumsy, and it it was perhaps fine for the question of, are you a true human being or are you just an intellectual animal? But that's not who my message is for, right? My message here is to differentiate and make a distinction for all of those on the path, and that includes the normies and includes the people who are on self-help and everything else, and so on. Like, it I cannot get my message to overpower, right? Like, that previous attempt at the bicycle analogy and the bicycle and the unicycle was a failed attempt to illustrate the difference, the vast gulf between a bicycle and a unicycle. Well, a unicycle is missing one of the wheels. It's missing handlebars. And oh my god, it's so panicky, and that's why we're all panicking, because we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off. We don't know what to do, right? Because we're all unicycling. And on one hand, there's truth in that, but the truth in that is, it was flawed logic. It was a desperate attempt to use a very powerful uh, 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 symbol, and the visceral craziness of unicycling versus bicycling. And I even used video of extreme unicyclists going downhill on dirt trails and wiping out in an attempt to for lack of a better expression, to bludgeon the viewer with this extreme images of, it's, well, think about how nice it is to ride a bike and how valuable bicycles are, and look at all the stuff that people can carry on bicycles versus how difficult it is to do the same thing with a unicycle. And this was this desperate attempt on my part to visualize, and in an experiential way, to get the viewer to use their imagination and say, yeah, life would be a lot easier if I wasn't unicycling. But this was way too blunt and heavy-handed an instrument, way too blunt and heavy-handed an attempt. And the lesson that I learned was that the the world has moved past that point. Even atheists are go to self-help gurus and know about the placebo effect and using the mind and so on and so forth. And that, and spiritual people talk about source, talk about this, talk about that. It's like, I was it was a failed attempt, because was trying to it was being too clever. And it was trying to overpower and outsmart, and have and create a voice that was louder and more visceral in its description. So it was experiential in that sense, but the realization I've come to now is that there is no way, it is absolutely impossible. I cannot shout down the internet. I cannot outperform, out uh overpower. I cannot get my voice heard above everybody else's trying to take that route. What I can do, however, is show the subtleties, the nuances, and trust that those subtleties and nuances, and, and just have faith and trust that the story, the allegories, the symbols will do the shouting for me, if you will. I don't have to invent or I don't have to attempt to less is more. Less is more. Simply put, less is more. If the devil is in the details, right? And the fat pigeon landing on the balance bar can knock you off the high-rise tightrope. The high wire, I should say. Then the reverse is also true. It's focusing in on what matters and on those little tiny details that make all the difference. And that's hopefully, I've taken a step in that direction today, and that using this approach, focusing in not on the big picture stuff and telling people stuff that they already know and so on, but honing in and just focusing in on where and how people have been misled. Because they haven't been misled in huge, enormous ways. It's tiny little omissions. It's tiny little changes. It's tiny little tweaks, little twists that create that 180-degree inversion. There's still a man and there's still a woman on this bike. One man and one woman on this bike. There's a man and a woman, but it's a boy and a woman, but their orientation is the same. The male first, followed by the female. But is the female riding your back, or does the female got your back? That's the difference. Are you being taken for a ride by mechanical nature? Or are you being taken for a ride, the ride of your life, by divine Mother Nature? That's the question, to be or not to be. And it's this subtle. And this is my task, to focus in on these details where the devil is, and leave the broad strokes to everybody else, because they've covered the broad strokes. Right? It's what they're missing, what people haven't been told, what they haven't been shown. This is Atlas information. This is Atlas information. This story, this parable. Benjamin has been waiting several minutes for me to read this, so let's read this now. In the book of Revelation, two symbolic women are presented. One represents the faithful woman, often understood as the church, while the other is depicted as the whore of Babylon. Yeah, so that's absolutely in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is something that can be studied for years. It is a handbook for awakening and self-realization of the being. It's not just a prophetic text. These are the two women. These are the two women. I'm gonna do a slide where the two of them are side by side. So, and I may find better images. I don't know. I like these ones so far, but I mean, we'll see, right? We'll see. But I think that in terms of videos and content moving forward, um, my focus is going to be really honing in and finding specifics to be to be to be able to give much clearer, better defined. In other words, if if it's the little things, it's the details, if the devil is in the details, then we need to have those details blown up like under a microscope. We need to put those details under a microscope, and we need to enlarge them and see them for what they are. And that's what symbol and allegory and analogy can do, like today, that that I hope I can continue this moving forward. Benjamin says, you could use AI to generate videos and images much easier now using careful and thoughtful prompting. Um, I have been looking into it, but I've not taken the plunge, mostly due to cost. Because to get any video generating tools of any reasonable quality, you have to pay. And not only do you have to pay, you have to make it's far more it's way more expensive if you pay monthly. If you pay annually, it's cheaper. But to pay annually, you have to commit to one platform or another. So I have not made that commitment yet. Um, and frankly, I'm not even sure if I have to. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but in the past, I think my explainer videos do explain very well. And so far, that's one thing that AI has not been good at. It hasn't been good at doing text and things like that, because just the way it works. So, but I mean, I'm open. I'm open to using the technology as a tool. It's just, again, it's just for me. It's a question of finances, especially since recently I moved. Um, I I I moved into a place, and it's the expenses are high, and I drained a lot of resources, during the move and preparing the new place. So um, I'm just, I just can't, like, these tools are expensive, right? I mean, they have, yeah, people have said that, free ones and this, but the free, you get what you pay for. Free is what it is. So, but I appreciate the uh the the advice, Benjamin, and rest assured that I am looking into it. It's just a question of getting the right tool for the right price. That's really what it comes down to. I should also mention, or I could also mention, that maybe uh, it's we're already past 2 hours, so I will not get into this now, but I'll leave it leave it for next week, because there is a one of the reasons why this came to me, or was able to come to me during this week. These and I foresee this happening more, is that I am circling back and revisiting concepts and truths and analogies, symbols, allegories that have come to me in the past, and I'm circling back to them, and in the spirit of the Alm of Life, I'm revisiting them at a deeper level, and as I go deeper into them, new it's generating it's the dividends that process is creating. It's yielding greater truths, greater knowledge. And the process by which I'm doing this, I've undertaken a new course in my life where I have become a beginner again. And I'll talk more about this next week. And I'll have more to say about it next week, because this is only a recent development. But all I can say is that today's live stream, and the fact that my bicycle analogy is so much more potent and powerful now, and simpler, because I have taken this attitude, not mental attitude, but positioned myself back at the beginning. I've done one, how many revolutions of the Alm of Life, but this last period of my life, this chapter is closed and the next chapter is opening. And this new chapter, I've returned to the beginning. And with that attitude and orientation, I've aligned myself with receiving again and being open and receptive. And one of the first things that happened was that this new revelation, this new version, this refinement of what is a 4-year-old analogy. I did these videos on the human condition and being a bicyclist like 3 or 4 years ago. The videos on my computer are from like 2022. We're now in 2026. So I'll be talking more about lifelong learning and more about and this will also result in a refinement and an expansion of the Alm of Life itself. And that we can talk about, descending and ascending, but what does that really mean? What does that really entail? So, all of this and more will be forthcoming as I continue this process of basically emptying my cup and allowing my cup to be refilled. But that doesn't mean I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? I didn't discard the bicycle analogy. I just poured it out of my cup. I just forgot about it. I let it go. It's on the internet, it's doing what it's doing, or it's not doing anything. And putting myself back in the beginning as a beginner, now the bicycle analogy came to me again, but for the first time. In a new way, in a better way, in a more refined way, in a more comprehensive way, in a more simple way, and a much, much, much more meaningful way. And this is why Socrates and so many others throughout history have stated that the greatest wisdom, the greatest knowledge, and really the only knowledge we have is that we know nothing, and that is the greatest of wisdom, and that lifelong learning, and to be a perpetual student, a perpetual initiate, a perpetual empty cup, as the Buddha would say, empty your cup. He's not just talking about, quieting your mind in meditation, but everything that you think you know and that you think you've got a handle on. Yeah, just don't throw it out. Just pour it out. Just let it be. Let it go. Let it go. It's like there's that cliche about if you love something, set it free. If you're really meant to be with it, it'll come back. But it'll come back greater than it was before. And that's exactly what this bicycle analogy did. So there's no fear in letting it go. You have nothing to lose. Because if it really has a role to play in your life, it will find its way back into your life. But because you set it free, it can go off and it can grow, it can develop, it can become what it needs to be, so that when it does return back to you into your life, it can serve its purpose and do what it really needed to do in your life. Anyway, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk much more about this next week, and or see what else this new approach and this new orientation brings by way of new insights and so on. Benjamin says, "Whoop." Okay, says, I'm interested in your perspective on the recently released Epstein files. Some people suggest that this is another psyop, while others see it as evidence of deep corruption and satanic traits among powerful elites in positions of influence. In light of these developments, some individuals have expressed a growing sense of disillusionment about the state of our institutions and society as a whole. Do you plan to host a live stream to share your thoughts and address this topic in more detail? It's a good question. It's obviously a notable question. It's a worthwhile question, given that the Epstein files are obviously very topical right now. I have not really taken a deep dive into it. I can say with absolute certainty that child sacrifice is alive and well in the world. And when I say child sacrifice, I mean that in every conceivable possible sense of the word, of the phrase. Without getting into any gory details, you have an imagination. If you know about history, and you've obviously, Benjamin knows for sure, in terms of having read the Bible, I have spoken in the past about innocence and purity of energy, purity of vitality, and how that is the most coveted substance in the universe. Okay, so understand what I'm speaking about in the context of today's live stream. Were I to combine these two images, okay, use your imagination and take the child from this image and replace the man with that child. And you have the essence and the foundation of the entire Epstein saga. Um, Perhaps I will, at some point in the future, maybe next week, we'll see. Maybe I will spend some time looking into it some more. If I go deep in meditation and ask to be shown additional information, or what I need to what could be valuable, um, I'll have to see what I'm shown. But maybe Benjamin asking the question, uh, maybe there's greater purpose in you even asking the question. And give me time to contemplate that and meditate on it, and I will have an answer for you. Just not right now, immediately. It would make sense, though, and not only from the standpoint of making it a topic for one of these live streams, but for making a video about it. But in order to do that, it's going to take some time to, I'm going to have to go and reread the book of Revelations, for instance, and, I would very much need to bone up on my Babylonian history. And there's a lot that that goes into that topic, because I would want to cover it again comprehensively from the standpoint of this is nothing new. It's not new. Surely people know that this is not new. This is not a modern, phenomenon. And it's just a phenomenon which it's so distasteful and it's so disturbing that people would rather not talk about it. And even today, I think the majority of people, the normies, whatever, prefer not to talk about it or hear about it. They would rather just sweep it under the rug, like so many other things have been swept under the rug. But now's not the time to get into all of those details. I'm just sharing with you some of the implications and some of the broader strokes around the specific question of Epstein files, and questions of, corruption and satanic this and rituals and people's disillusionment in the state and all that stuff. They're right to be disillusioned about of the state, but not only, and not just because of the Epstein files. So that's actually another question. That's another issue. That's secondary and superfluous. They might be pointing to the Epstein files as saying, "Oh, look, because of all the politicians who are on that list." So, but again, the broader question there is about the system, because institutions don't work for you. They work for the system. And what is the system? The system is the big machine. And what does a machine need? A machine needs power. Right? Exploitation of energy, exploitation of resources, of power. And so institutions exploit human resources. And what resource is most coveted, is most precious to mechanical nature and elements of mechanical nature? Innocence, purity. Think of it like a Formula One car or a multi-million dollar hypercar can't run on regular gas. A hypercar has to run on the highest octane fuel possible, and Formula One cars run on like ridiculously high octane fuel. The more power the engine has, the more refined fuel source of energy that it needs. Jet fuel is it's on a completely different level, right? So purity, right, that which is highest in power, that which is closest to the source of all power, that's innocence, that's youth. The highest vitality is the most youthful vitality. So you put two and two together, the machine is always going to seek to exploit the purest resource with the highest octane. And that, unfortunately, is also the weakest and most vulnerable in society. So the short answer is probably, I will probably do a live stream devoted to that particular topic. It's just a question of when will I have the time to do some of the deep dive work on the back end to prepare for that. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for today? I want to thank everyone for, Benjamin says, thank you, sir, for always sharing your valuable insights. I truly appreciate it. Wishing you happy Family Day and a great week ahead. Oh, yes. And, well, I guess if it's Family Day today, happy Family Day and happy Valentine's Day. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. So happy day after Valentine's Day. What's the word? Oh man, my brain is fried. I think I'm done for today for sure. Uh, belated. Happy belated Valentine's Day. All right. Any other questions or comments today before we call it? I want to thank everybody for coming out and spending the time. I hope today was valuable, and I hope that this new refinement of the bicycle analogy, the bicycle as an analogy of the human machine, and how the right way to orient ourselves as the human machine, as the human vehicle, in relation to our innermost and the divine feminine force, which has two polarities, and we need both. because we need to be tested. We need the obstacles. We need the adversary. We need the mechanical, inverted feminine, what we call mechanical nature. But we also need, but we cannot forget our reliance on our divine mother, the divine feminine force, divine mother nature, and recognize that the mechanical elements are always seeking to exploit. So, and I look forward to seeing what other details can be expanded upon and blown up, and give us a deeper insight into the workings of our metaphysical nature, and what practical lessons can they teach us. Because this is actually a big one. The implications of this are huge, and they're far reaching. And if I can refine the presentation and make it very short and tight and impactful, and really highlight how meaningful that difference is, then hopefully it will have a positive impact, and it will make a difference in the lives of many people who are at present not in this orientation, but sadly and lamentably in this orientation. All right. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and your attention. Have a great week. I hopefully will see you next week. And until then, as always, I got to get around my microphone here. Inferential peace. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.